Okay, cool. And we're live.
So
Yeah,
feels
so
good.
this is the Dreaming in Symbols podcast or show or whatever you'd like to call it. And it's been a while since I've done one of these, but for those of you watching this live or for those of you who will be watching it when it's archived, I'm very excited for today's show because I have Curtis Childs from Off the Left Eye YouTube channel, which is part of the Swedenborg Foundation. And if you're not familiar with Curtis's channel, you should become familiar with it. He does many. He's done I don't know how many episodes on Swedenborg and Swedenborgian theology, and the channel has exploded. And it is awesome for coming on today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I know we've done more than 100 episodes because we had like a special for our 100th episode, but that was a while ago. So we could be up in the 150s or something like that.
Wow, wow, yeah. And how many subscribers would you say roughly that you have now?
It's 40,000 something. So between 40 and 41,000.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
great.
which is cool. Yeah, and it's really been we've only really been doing this for a few years, and really the last 2 years have been where we've seen most of our growth. And that's YouTube helps you out. If you like you're doing, keep getting subscribers, you get, how you get more in the suggested videos and the feeds and everything like that, which pushes you further. So we hit certain thresholds, and that put us out to people. And because Swedenborg stuff is interesting, once people find us, they're like, oh, I want to see more. So then that kicks us up higher in the rankings, and we've been able to find a lot of people who are enjoying to various extents what we're doing.
That's great. And one thing I wanted to ask you, and you mentioned it just in that what you just said. Swedenborg. I remember before your channel caught on. About geez, I think I've been considering myself a Swedenborgian for about 4 years
Mm-hmm.
now. I remember, and there was like nothing
Yeah.
about Swedenborg, like hardly anything. And so the presence on YouTube was very small. And now, I mean, your channels are the most viewed videos on the subject. And so, a question that I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you've thought about this yourself, is why do you think Swedenborg is catching on so much, and especially why are people watching videos about Swedenborg on YouTube?
Yeah, so I had the same thing when I first started to go onto YouTube and look for Swedenborg. It was very sparse, just about nothing. There was a documentary Swedenborg Foundation had produced that someone else had re-uploaded. There was this thing called the Outer Streams, which was like Jonathan Rose, who's a translator, was interviewed long ago about Swedenborg, but that was it. Like there was just a few videos about Swedenborg. And so now, yeah, you go in there now, it's a lot more populated. That's part of why I was so happy to come onto your show, because you're talking about Swedenborg on YouTube, and it's rare enough that I'm like, oh yeah, let's connect. But the reason that I think people are enjoying Swedenborg now is the magic of YouTube and of the web, where Swedenborg is maybe not something that all palates are going to be interested in, but there's enough people that you can find through the specificity of the targeting tools and YouTube and everything, that you can gather from around the world. People would have an inclination toward it. And I think there's a lot of different groups of people who would be interested in Swedenborg. Like you get people who are interested in spiritual experiences or afterlife, that kind of thing. But then you also get people who are interested in what's a practical, life-based spirituality that I can follow. Yeah, I think you get people who are interested in theology. I think you get people who are interested in the paranormal, and all those kind of converge on Swedenborg. But I think up until now, there wasn't an easy way for those guys to find out that Swedenborg was something they'd be interested in. And so what we try to do is take him and get people past the initial barriers to Swedenborg. Because if you open up Swedenborg for the first time, there's no guarantee that you're going to fall in love with it. I don't know what your experience was initially encountering the books, but because there's that big diverse group of people who might be interested in Swedenborg, but there's equal diversity of reasons why you wouldn't be interested in him. I mean, you can open it up, and in some places he's speaking in a lot of Christian terminology, And that for some people, they're like, that's great. And other people are like, I don't want anything to do with Christianity. So you can get somebody thinking, oh, this isn't for me. But really, if they understood the full scope of what he's describing, they would like it. There's other places where he gets very wordy. He'll get very philosophical. I'm not going to say boring, but you know, he hedges towards that at times, right? It could be very dense. And that can be, people are like, why would I give, you know, a 27 volume set a chance when I can barely get through a page of it, you know? So that happens. But then also there's a lot of weird stuff in Swedenborg. You can open it up and he's talking about the spirits of the kidneys and, you know, and that this is the corresponding to Mars. And it's just like all kinds of stuff that if you're just jumping in right away, you might think, okay, this isn't for me. But on top of that, you'll get the, what do you want to call it? Swedenborg will give his own definition to words. Like he'll talk about a church, right? But when he talks about the church, he's talking about a bunch of different things that you don't always associate with that word church. He's talking about an internal state of heart and mind. You know, he's talking about religious epochs across history and the way people thought. However, if you don't know that, you can read a sentence of his and think he means something very different because he's using that. So people will come in there and say, oh, he's just saying something that I don't like. So what I see our function as is we try to get people past those barriers and into like whatever it is about Swedenborg that made you interested in it, you know, the cool stuff, when you really realize this is profound and this is insightful and this is fair and this is loving and this is probably true. That once you get to that stuff, then I think there's a lot of people in the world who would love Swedenborg, but you just got to navigate them past those hazards, you know, and those hazards would be different for different people depending on what your historical mindset is and your preferences now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, definitely. There's a lot of baggage with a lot of the words that are used in religious discourse. I mean, church, Christianity, you know, even God, you know, Jesus Christ. These are all things that people have tons of associations with, positive and negative.
Not to cut you off, but I just want to say that we get people who come in to our page just like spit and fire, like, you know, religion sucks, and they haven't watched anything, but they just be based on your title. Or it's the other way, you know, you'll get people from religion. People have already made their minds up and they're just like, I don't want anything to do this. Sorry, so we see what you're talking about on the web all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And that's an interesting, you know, my experience with reading Swedenborg and talking to people is that you kind of get these two perspectives that come in that are usually pretty polemical. I mean, on one hand, you've got the people who are saying, all religion sucks and you know, we should just do away with it. And then I know, like, for example, there's I think a 2-minute video here on YouTube that's pretty polemical, I think, from a more conservative Christian perspective, you know, saying that Swedenborg was a heretic and all these things. And so you kind of get that perspective. So I don't know, you know, I mean, it sounds like you've had the people come in and spit fire saying, you know, all religion sucks, but have you had a lot of interaction with more mainline conservative Christian folks?
Yeah, that's the joy of trying to promote Swedenborg on the web, is you have everybody's mad at you for different reasons.
Right.
So I want to preface this by saying, actually, my time on YouTube and on Facebook with this stuff has been really enjoyable. And we actually, as compared to sort of the background noise of YouTube, like YouTube, no offense, we're on YouTube right now, but it's kind of got a reputation for its comment sections being like a bad neighborhood. You know, the YouTube is where a lot of people act at their worst. If you watch like big live streams, you just see the chat. People are just like throwing up the most offensive words they can think of. But I've been surprised by how positive it's been since we got here, and by the level of discourse, and that there's a lot of people. So prefacing it with that, certainly we've had our interactions from both camps, and I would say even more often from what you could call fundamentalist Christianity or something like that, saying, you know, Swedenborg is wrong because of Bible verse X, or Swedenborg is wrong because of, you know, thing I've been taught by my religious leader or dogma. And those people usually are very hard to get a conversation going with, because there's sort of we're here to yell at you rather than to discuss. But it's not always the case, and that's what I've learned, is that people aren't always as they appear. There's times when somebody comes in and you think, oh, they're just here to but then you start to talk to them and it turns out they're totally different, and you end up have a good conversation and it ends well. So you never know. And it's hard because we've started to get enough comments on our channel. It's very tough to keep up with it. It's not just me answering, it's a group of people, but still we get so many. Like this morning I was trying to answer some of them, but it's like we still got like so many notifications. So you have to try to pick where is this going to matter? If it's somebody who is not looking to learn something then is it really worth putting time into? So you've got to try to pick, but it's tough, So I would say, yes, we've had positive and negatives from all directions. Overall, I feel encouraged about humanity by my interaction on YouTube. People are more diverse than you think. You can kind of think of, there are these broad categories. There's Christians, and there's conservative Christians, and there's Muslims, but it's like there's every combination of person that you could possibly imagine. Like there is a person who is like a Christian, but they don't believe in life after death, or they're an atheist, but they believe in reincarnation or something. Like there's just all kinds of. There's people that believe that think that I'm an alien. A reptilian alien. There's people who are very mad at us because we show the Earth as round, rather than flat. There's just people of all different kinds, and I'm sort of, but a lot of them, it's just cool, free thought. It's people thinking through things for themselves, and there's a lot of really sweet people out there that are kind and interacting in a positive way and want to be friendly. So it's a lot of cool stuff.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think it's great that your experience has given you hope for humanity, because, a lot of people, call the internet the place where, religion goes to die, or the place where, the worst in folks all the time, it's just such a downer. So I'm glad for you that your experience has been a really positive one, it sounds like. Yeah,
and it hasn't been entirely so, but yeah, overall it's been cool. And part of it is that we put the time in to converse with people. We take some time to moderate environments, try to create a positive vibe that seems to be paying some dividends. But yeah, I think in the case of Swedenborg, the internet is where he goes to finally get his due. I think these are the tools that are finally going to get him his rightful place in the world conversation. Because I think what he says is awesome. It deserves to be an option on people's menu. That if what Swedenborg's stuff is about, and you can go there. I'm not saying everyone's got to read it or like it, but it should be like one of the main options. You're like, oh, here, you can do this or this or Swedenborg. And I think the web is what's going to do it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I found that for myself, that, a lot of people just aren't even aware that his writings and his ideas are an option, and I feel really satisfied when I'm talking to somebody who, because I have my own personal hangups around certain religious concepts, and it's fun for me to talk to somebody who also has serious issues with certain theological concepts, and then to say, well, Swedenborg says this about the afterlife, or Swedenborg says this about how God interacts with us. And I can really tell people from all different perspectives and backgrounds have such a positive reaction to a lot of things that he's talking about. And I think that that's so important, for people to be exposed to it as an option, as you said.
I was just on Friday. I was a guest on a radio show on the West Coast. Where are you based out of?
So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. Yeah. So I'm not sure where she was. I think she's a little farther south. But she was talking, and this is somebody who's found Swedenborg a while ago, but is still reading through them. And she had just come upon his description of the Trinity and what the Trinity is, And you would think that's not maybe something that is really going to move people's hearts, but for her it was a huge deal, because when she was young, she had been taught this traditional view of the Trinity, and it had always bothered her and confused her. when she hit Swedenborg, she's just like, this just changed my life, just to see his explanation of it. So it's just cool to think that even something that even I personally, before we did an episode of our show about that, and that's when I really started to think, oh, it's actually pretty cool what he's saying. But prior, I was just like, the Trinity, you know, theology stuff. But the idea that can actually be really like nourishing to someone's soul, it just does show that it needs to be, the ideas need to be out there, because you never know who's going to be in need of this particular idea.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's funny you mentioned the concept of the Trinity, because a few days ago, since I was on campus where I go to school, in seminary, and I was talking to a fellow seminarian who's actually in the Unitarian Universalist denomination, and was talking to her, and she's taking a pretty typical Christian theological course, and she was reading about the Trinity, and she was just real, and she grew up Christian. I don't know which mainline Christian church, and then became a Unitarian Universalist, but she's reading this textbook, and I sat down to talk with the book down and said, I'm frustrated with this concept of the Trinity. This is just so ridiculous, And then she looked at me and she said, what do Swedenborgians say? What does Swedenborg say about the Trinity? And I was, and I told her, and by the end of it, she was like, okay, I like this.
Well, and
that's for people.
It does, and it is just nice to be like, when an idea makes sense, it just feels good, and particularly when it's an idea that a lot hangs on, like what's God like, to have something that at least is logically consistent with itself makes a big difference. And I think that's a service that Swedenborg can provide to people, not just Swedenborgians, but other Christians, for a particular idea like the Trinity, and many other faiths for other ideas. But here's a way that it makes sense, so that you don't have to take your thinking mind that you engage everything else with and put it to sleep with religious things. But here's a way that it can pass the can it really fly test,
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, and you sort of alluded to it in terms of the things like that interest you personally about Swedenborg. But one thing that I actually realized that I don't know about is like where you like how you got into Swedenborg, or were you raised as a Swedenborgian? I just realized I actually don't know anything about your particular background yourself.
Yeah,
so
I'm very mysterious.
Just wondering if you might indulge. I was wondering if you might indulge us with breaking the mystery, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Revealed for the first time. No, it's not that interesting, but I'll tell you it. Sure. So I was raised Swedenborgian. I went to church, Swedenborg Church, when I was little. My parents read Swedenborg and are still very much into Swedenborg. And I actually went to Swedenborgian schools for like half my school life. I think I did elementary school in a Swedenborgian school, then middle school in a non, and then high school the first 2 years non-Swedenborgian, then back to Swedenborg. So I had a lot of like, Swedenborg was all over for me. Swedenborg was the norm for me growing up, which is like puts me in a very select group of people, lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, that it was just normal to me to like, oh yeah, what does Swedenborg say about this? But even within that, I was in sort of a subcategory that actually cared about it. Just because you're raised in a particular faith tradition doesn't mean you're going to be excited about that, But I was like, this is cool. I want to know more about this when I was little. And then as I grew, it just didn't really leave. I just wanted to dig more and more into it. So I had a pretty good conditions leading up to, creating a lasting interest in Swedenborg for me. So there's a short version, but you can ask other things if you want to.
Yeah, that. I'm very curious about people's journeys and their personal experiences with their religious traditions, or however that journey might look for them. And and so I guess one question that I have is, was there ever a point when you were growing up, or even entering into adulthood, where you had doubts or frustrations with what you were reading?
I had one today. Well, like I was trying to get ready for this show, and I like ran in to get my keys And I was like, oh, where are they? I can't find them, you know? And right then, like, come on, God is real. Like, why aren't you showing me where the key is? Right. You know, like this is I think a struggle you have every day. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if any of this is real or not, but you struggle with like, is this real? Like, how do you square those things? So I would say I'm very much like other people in that I fluctuate throughout the day. Like, if you ask me, I would say, yeah, like I do think God exists and is influencing life and is influencing life for our benefit, but it's really hard. It doesn't mean I don't get upset at times. You know what I mean? So there's that, but there have been larger kind of deviations that I've had. I mean, there was a point at which I stopped reading Swedenborg because it was bothering me. You know, I was 18 or 19 and I was going through a bout of pretty intense depression, and I was thinking a lot, and I was obsessive compulsive, and it was just I said 18 or 19, 20. And I was reading Swedenborg really intently at that point. I was reading what he said about spiritual struggles and thinking, oh, is this what I'm going through? And reading what he said about how spirits affect the mind and all this stuff, right? But eventually I found that this was adding to the chaos in my mind. I was latching on to stuff too much. I wasn't getting results. You know, it was just like, I need to take a break. So I like pushed it away. I didn't read it. I did read other things though. That's when I was reading a lot of near-death experiences, which those had a big impact on me. I was doing some other things. And then I was like taking care of the physical, you know, like making sure that I got hydrated and exercised. I did like talk therapy. I did a little bit of medication for a little while, taking care of that stuff. And eventually I came back around. And when I came back to Swedenborg, I think is when it really started to take off for me. When it became this kind of indispensable tool for me to navigate life with.
Wow. Well, I really do appreciate you sharing, you know, your personal experiences, and it really sounds like you went through, you know, a time of crisis and a time of, you know, personally, and you know, and definitely Swedenborg was there, but you knew that you had to kind of step back and take care of yourself, you know, the importance of the physical as well as the mental and spiritual life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that holds true to this day. Yeah, and we're just doing a show. We did a show called "How Spirits Are Connected to Your Health," and the content in there was about how do the physical and spiritual interplay according to Swedenborg. And the physical is always a part of it. You know, Swedenborg is very much advocating that the forms of the physical body matter. You can't expect to have a sound mind if the body isn't working well. So still to this day, Swedenborg is awesome, but you know, just ideas alone aren't going to solve all the problems for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, you know, one question I wanted to ask you is, you know, speaking of, you know, a video that you just did, or, you know, I'm just curious, what do you think the future direction of your channel is? I mean, what can we expect from Off the Left Eye going forward into the near future?
Yeah, I would love to know the answer to that. I would say that I'm just between you and me. The trajectory of our channel has a lot of times been reactive and accidental. So really that's been my whole, if you want to call it a career, a lot of it's been like right place, right time. Something turned out better than I expected it would, you know, which I think Swedenborg would call providence. But within the YouTube channel, I began, if you go back to our earliest videos, you'll see they're very different than what we're doing now. The tone of them is very different. Actually, the very first video I ever made was sort of arguing, does God exist? Does God not exist? You know? And it was like a cartoon. And the reason that it was like that is because before that, I didn't know anything about YouTube. I had never spent time on it. I just knew that, you know, if somebody falls off a roof, you put a video of it on YouTube, right? Like that was sort of like what YouTube was to me, right? But then I went on there because I was part of this organization that was trying to get Swedenborg out. It was a job that I had, not the one I'm with now, not the Swedenborg Foundation, but it was something prior to that. And I was like, how do we get a lot of people to know about Swedenborg fast? And I found YouTube. And on YouTube, I found out that there was this discussion. It was mostly like, atheists arguing that God doesn't exist or what's wrong with religion. And it was getting so many views. And I was like, wow, I want to get those many views. And the videos that they were making, like they were making good points, but they weren't, it wasn't hard to produce. I mean, it was just like a guy like talking over a PowerPoint. You know, it was very, very low budget. And I was like, hey, we could do that. You know, we could do that. And also I saw this sort of a big gap in the conversation. It sort of seemed like it was either the groups we talked about in the beginning, it was either strict materialist, there's nothing spiritual, or religious fundamentalist, entrenched, dogmatic perspective. And there wasn't sort of this cool middle ground. There was, but it's not big. You know, like there's no like, oh yeah, you know who like the biggest atheists are, and there's a couple of sort of big religious people, but you didn't see like really big people in the middle. So I thought Swedenborg can fill that. You know, Swedenborg is this bridge, I think, between. So that's why I made a video about is God real or not, because that's what everyone was making videos about. But we've evolved a lot on the channel since then. And like, I'll give you a concrete example. The show that we do now is an hour long, right? And how it came about was we had been producing short videos because I thought it's got to be short or people are never going to be interested in it, right? You're never going to take the time to watch something. So we were making actually minute-long videos and called the Swedenborg Minute, where we just one concept, here you go. And that was going, but we weren't like gaining traction like I really wanted to. Like we're getting a good amount of views, but it wasn't necessarily going up year over year. And I just felt, how do we get somewhere? And I was thinking, when we need to have sort of an overview of the basics of Swedenborg stuff, right? And it needs to be maybe a series of 8 15-minute videos. You could watch these back to back, and you wouldn't know the entirety of the course, but you would be able to say, this is the basics of what he's about. So I thought, we're going to make that, and that's going to take a while to produce. In the meantime, I don't really want to lose my subscribers, right? Because we had built up a few by then, a couple thousand. And I was like, I don't want to leave those people hanging, you know? So I thought, well, we'll just make a really simple video every week while we're working on that stuff, right? And it'll be really, no graphics, and it'll be really easy to produce. But then I started thinking, I don't want to have to think up a video because I want to be thinking about these other videos. Well, maybe I'll just read some Swedenborg, on camera. And I was thinking, oh man, maybe it'll be like a 2-camera setup, but that would take editing. Maybe I'll just do it as a live broadcast. Okay, all right. So I got in touch so we started doing a live broadcast, and I started reading through Swedenborg's an excerpt of Heaven and Hell. And we just read through it part by part, and I was like explaining it as best I could as we went, right? And that started to catch on, which was unbelievable to me. People were listening and watching the whole way through, and then from there, the show just started to take off more and more. And so we made upgrades to it and changed the format. And eventually it was getting us this traction and subscribers and interest. So we said, all right, never mind, we're going to follow that. We're going to do that for the rest. So that's the story of how we got to doing what we're doing. I would say, if I was to think about what's the ideal, I see that there's kind of 3 categories of things that you need to do. You should be providing to people. One is a look within Swedenborg's world, which is, I think, what we're doing on the 1-hour show right now. We're going to explain Swedenborg's ideas. We're going to show you where we think they match up with how other people are describing reality. But it's going to be explaining what he did. It's going to be mostly an informational thing. I think you need to provide people with easy things that they can do. Like on the practice side of things, like here's a little exercise that should help you with less anxiety throughout the day. And we've done a few of those, but I think you could really dig into Swedenborg and find what I would call spiritual tools to really help people in situations. I think we could, hopefully in the future, we're producing more of those. And then I'd love to take some time to, how do you use Swedenborg to look at the modern world? How do you look at current events, that kind of stuff? How can Swedenborg be a benefit to that conversation? I think we want to go in that direction too. So, I mean, so those are the places I hope to get to on our channel coming up. But we're going to see what the web does, and what succeeds. And we want to remain as nimble as we can, because you never really know.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You don't, yeah. But it sounds like, I mean, I appreciate the story of the journey of your channel and knowing, what are these 3 broad categories that you're hoping to engage with in the future. And it really sounds like that you're trying to, or your hope is to give people practical tools with which to, experience Swedenborg's writings, and also or his ideas, and also how to view relevant topics as well through the lens of his writings. And I think that that's great, because it takes it from just, dusting off a 30 volume, set of writings and not really knowing, what to do with it, and really having this sort of applied, spirituality, or this application, which I think is, people are hungry for that, at least in my experience.
Yep. I want to get it to where the impact of the thing overall on people is so good that even if you're somebody who's never going to believe what he wrote, or you're never going to get into it, that you're still like, well, but I'm glad that they're around. Like, I'm glad that my neighbor is a Swedenborgian, because I know that that I can trust him, and that he's going to help me if I need it, and that he's going to be. So that's what I hope, is that we get it to a point where it's, for people who want to get into it, it's something that can be enlightening and comforting, and help them solve problems, and help them heal if they need to, or learn all that. So it's a cool experience of practice and learning for people. And then for the rest of the world, it's a thing that it's a good neighbor. People are like, well, we're glad. Yeah, oh, that's great. That's cool that there's a Swedenborgian group meeting in our neighborhood, because we know that they bring something good to it. So hopefully that's where we can get to eventually.
Yeah. So, empowering people individually, but also having a really good, positive PR.
Yeah.
with communities. Yeah. That's great. So another question that I'm just curious about, what your thoughts are is, out of all of Swedenborg's ideas, what's the one, if you could just pick one, that you feel is one that you love the most or inspires you the most? And then conversely, what's one idea that you find to be the most controversial or hard in your experience, or
Sure.
even if you've seen other people having issues with?
Yeah. Okay. So my favorite is Don't Believe Everything You Think. Swedenborg's commentary on the origin of psychological phenomena. Like, where are your thoughts coming from? Where are your feelings coming from? What leads to the creation of the narratives about your life that you play out in your head? Why do you interpret events the way that you do? His explanation of those has been a lifesaver for me. That's my favorite concept, and whenever I get a chance to teach it to people, I love it. So I think that was what has been the most helpful to me. So that's what I think, and it's a hard one to get into, because you got to get pretty deep into his theology to bring it up. But we've created a bridge now to where we can on the channel, and we do. And so to me, that's like, there are so many people who are walking around in this solitary agony, and it's because of the things that they believe about themselves. It's because of the things that impinge on their consciousness daily, at moment to moment. It's because of the way they're ruminating about the past, and it's because of their beliefs about the future. You just start talking to people. A ton of people are suffering from this stuff. And to me, Swedenborg gave me all the pieces to really live my head out above that. This is a view of that stuff that is awesome and free. So that's my favorite. And my least favorite, well, it's fun. We just did a show about animals, Swedenborg's ideas about animals. And there's stuff that I really like what is it, the essence of an animal, what happens, what is, and particularly animals in the afterlife, to me, that is like, not that, some aspects of it are really cool. Other aspects are not very satisfying. And especially, I was originally majoring in biology to study conservation biology. Like, I love ecosystems and I love nature. And right now, his picture of what nature is in the spiritual world at times falls flat for me. Like, there's an aspect of it where he talks about, the mind of angels going out into forms that are the precursors to the animals that we see here, that kind of stuff. That's cool. But it's missing some pieces. I trust that when I get there, I'll get it, but there'll be some more that I don't understand right now. But to me, that's like, and it's a weird niche one to be worried about. But then again, man, you start talking about afterlife on the web, people are wondering about their pets. That like comes up more than you would possibly believe. So that's one. Yeah. Then also, like, obviously he's talking about spirits in our solar system that are associated with different planets in our solar system. And that is a pain because it's like, man, what are you talking about? So we're getting ready to do a show about that. And so it's cool. Well, I say I wanted to do one for a while, but I'm kind of delaying it because the new translation of his book, Other Planets, is coming out. And I kind of wanted to launch it with that, but I might just get to it. But that's cool because you have to look through all the nuances of what's he really saying, and how does he actually report these experiences? How does he come to them? What are the possible explanations for it? So that is something, but it's the thing that people first go to when they want to say like, nah, Swedenborg isn't cool. Look, they say that first. They say, look, he said there were spirits on the moon, which is fine for them to say that because it's a legit thing to pick on. But also, I do think that there's actually more shades of gray in this story. But still, I wish that he just hadn't said that. I wish he had said something different because then I wouldn't have to worry about it. But then again, maybe in studying it for this episodes, I'll come to some kind of realization of like, oh, actually, I'm glad this is part of the whole world of it. So those are a couple of things. I'll come across other things, but there's nothing that's like really getting me to lose sleep. I think that's probably why I've stuck with Swedenborg as much as I have.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that it's, the Other Planets, book and the questions revolving around that. I mean, I know that there's been some discussion about that text in my local congregation. I know that there's going to be a few of us who are actually going to be reading that book together, and because I think some people are just too weirded out by it, and so we're going to see how that goes. But yeah.
What's so weird about the spirits of Jupiter,
Right. I mean, Martian spirits, and everything.
Well, if you guys are go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I think people I think having a nuanced approach to it, or being, critical, or kind of wondering, what did he really mean by some of these things? I think that that's a really good place to be, especially when he's talking about topics about other planets. Or I know a lot of people get into very fierce debates and discussions around marriage love, as well as another text that comes up. That's a thorn for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, right. I forgot about that one. But then again, we did a show that was it's called Spiritual Marriage, and it was kind of based on that. We got it pretty good. We didn't get a lot of, I thought there would be some drama around that one, but there wasn't. But maybe I'm sure there's drama to come. So that, but then again, like I do find it, like with Other Planets, the book, when you start to get into it, when he talks about his encounters with these spirits, he'll say like, I was there and I saw something above the right eye to the left, which showed me that these spirits were from Planet X. That it's not just like he's saying I was in my spiritual spaceship and I went and literally looked at those, so that there's room for wait, what's really going on here? And I sort of feel that way about marriage love. And what are you thinking about? Which controversies are you thinking about from marriage love?
Well, I think what I've heard from people, and I have to preface this by saying that I have not read the whole text. We sort of had a very small engagement with it in a class that I'm taking with James Lawrence, basically the Swedenborg 101 class that I'm taking right now.
Yeah.
And
hey, can I just say that right after this, we're going to interview him for our show. So it's like small world.
Good. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's awesome. Tell him I say hi.
Okay. I will.
I think, keeping in mind that, Swedenborg as an individual was a product of, the 18th century, and talking about things that might be either offensive or might seem outdated in terms of our 21st century mindset about marriage and sexuality and things like that. So I think that's probably the big thing that people run across when engaging with that text in particular.
Yeah. I think probably the two biggest things you're probably going to get are people who are wondering about gay marriage and like, where does that fit in with his he's very heterosexually focused in that book. So how do you reconcile those? And then other people are thinking about the second half of the book, where he makes controversial statements about like you could that under certain circumstances, it's okay to go outside the marriage if it's done in a certain way, you know, those sorts of things. So I think those will probably be the 2 points that people are going to be most, you know, if we ever get to we're ever lucky enough to have Swedenborg out in the wide world where everyone's talking about him, I think those are going to be 2 points that are going to generate a lot of discussion. And I like the idea of going into, we sort of didn't go into those heavily in our episode because it was like you'd have to do a whole episode on those. But I'd love to, like, I don't know, like we get some kind of panel of like different Swedenborgians and like, what do you think about this? What is this? Or like people who stakeholders in that issue, you know, have them talk about it. I just think it would be cool to discuss it more and like get in there and see what's he really saying and what do we think and everything. So I feel excited when I think about that stuff. Like it could make for some good TV, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, sign me up for that future panel episode.
You're in.
Thank you.
We just gotta find an audience now. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. Well, I'm looking at our time, you know, Curtis, and I know you have to prep for your interview with Jim. So sure. I just want to give you I just want to thank you so much again for coming on the show, and I just want to give you, you know, the last word, as it were, before you.
Sure. Well, so listen, man. I think we could do about like 8 more minutes or something. Fine. And I say that because I want to hear like from you a little bit. I would love to hear like. I know a little bit of your story, like I've seen your videos and that kind of thing, but what do you see as the future of your interest in Swedenborg, and what's your future on? Are you going to stay on YouTube? You know, are you going to keep making videos there? And so a little bit about where you're headed, you know?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, and I definitely can talk about that. And you know, if ever in the future, besides the panel idea, if you want me on your show at some point in the future, I would be honored to show my face on there.
Cool, man.
to talk about it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, for me, because I'm in seminary right now, I'm studying at the Center of Studies, and for me, my trajectory is really, you know, becoming an ordained Swedenborgian minister with General Convention, or, you know, Swedenborgian Church in North America. But, you know, for me, my passion really, besides doing ministry, is I'm also a psychotherapist in training, and my passion really is the intersection between psychology and belief, or psychology and religion.
Yeah.
So I really think that Swedenborg, with his experiences, is very inspiring in terms of that context, and, you know, really wanting to understand what motivates people to believe what they believe. Why do people change their religions? Why do people change their opinions? Why about theology? Why is there such a diversity of thought about spirituality? And also, how does religion impact mental health? And I think that those are things that I really want to study, and have been studying, you know, non-academically in some ways for several years. But I think that that's the direction I'd like to go. And in terms of, you know, yeah, I definitely will be staying on YouTube. And, you know, I try to do as much, you know, many different topics as I can, you know, bring forth. And but I think the emphasis on psychology and religion is definitely the direction that my channel is going. But I certainly want to do more videos about Swedenborg, because honestly, you know, I've mentioned Swedenborg in some videos and some of my, you know, blog posts, but I actually haven't sat down and fired up the camera and done a video where I was actually talking about Swedenborg, you know, throughout the whole video. So I think that's something that I definitely want to start doing in the future, because I have people say, "Oh, so you're Swedenborgian. Well, what does that mean, or what is that?" And I haven't really done a good job of following up and answering that question myself. I certainly send traffic over to your channel, but I think that, which is great, and I know people get a lot from that, but people are asking me, and so I think I definitely need to answer those questions. So.
Yeah, well, I like, sign me up for this psychology and religion stuff. I mean, that's cool. Like I'm a fan of you pursuing that track and pursuing how does Swedenborg work his way into that world. I think that's cool, and I think, like, you know, I would love to see a YouTube someday where there's all kinds of different Swedenborg content on it. you know, and we're trying our best to do the best we can where we are, but we're always going to say things like we say them, you know, on my channel. But I want you to say things like you say them on your channel. And then there's going to be some people who your style is going to resonate with them more than our style does. And so, or you can have like conversations that we don't, or something, you know. So I just like want to encourage you in what you're doing. I think that's great. And yeah, we can hopefully touch base more and more in the future, you know, as the thing expands. And then hopefully eventually, yeah, there's enough Swedenborgs on YouTube that we're all getting traffic from each other, and people are able to find, you know, people have as many options as they want to find their favorite brand of it and find the experience that they're looking for. And I need stuff, man. I need stuff to listen to when I'm mowing the lawn, you know, and stuff like that. So the more everybody's talking about it, thinking about it, moving the ball forward, the better it is for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. You know, definitely having the Swedenborgian, or, you know, just, you know, the diversity of people talking about Swedenborg, and, you know, presenting these ideas the best we can in our own unique way, and giving people options. I think that's, I agree. I think that's the most important thing going forward with our presence on YouTube. Definitely.
Cool. Oh, okay. So I'll get my last word in now. I just want to say thanks for having me. Hope that you enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll do it again sometime. And get, I don't know, bring Corey. I saw an episode with you and Corey Bradford Watts. That was cool. So maybe bring him on sometime. We can get some kind of you know, like we'll pick a topic and get really deep into it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you again. And that's a great idea. And I look forward to having you back on the show in the near future, Curtis. Thank you.
Absolutely. See ya.
All right. Take care.